Good afternoon. This is John Bushka. I'm in a friend's condo this afternoon, just a different change of scenery. I wanted to talk about conservatives, especially the Christian right, concerns about youth and exposure to LGB-T-Q materials, which is both trans and gay in the past, and some people wanting to cut off all access to minors completely from the internet. One possibility I've talked about before is the possibility of a bill requiring age authentication when you sign on for all sites. That's a possibility that could happen in the future, as I'm very concerned about. Even sites that today don't require you to sign on at all, if you talk about anything at all, that could be a problem. Unfortunately, as we know, there are some people in the world who think that any exposure at all of youth to this material discourages them from marrying and having children later in life. That's a particularly popular way of thinking in Russia and to some extent Orban's Hungary and other parts of the world. There's a danger that could be copied here. I also wanted to say that, and I do oppose the presenting of ideas like gender identity to young children in early grades in school. I think that was a mistake that we went down that direction. But I do think that high school students need to be taught everything. When they take biology, they need to be taught the proper biology of sex and animals in our world. But moreover, they need to be taught the social studies history, and they need to be taught the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and they'll need to be taught some of the Supreme Court decisions, such as the history of the sodomy laws was Hardwick versus Bowers in 1986 that confirmed them. But Lawrence versus Texas in 2003, if Lawrence versus Texas were overturned, you would certainly have to teach that at one time that decision had been in effect and what the reasoning had been. You would also have to teach Obergefell, the gay marriage decision, that took a long time. It was very controversial, but that in 2015, it was, in June of 2015, it was made the law of the land. If it were to be overturned now, the way the abortion, the Roe versus Wade was overturned, you would have to teach why it had been in effect before, which would give you more points of view. And of course, even teaching the overturning of Roe versus Wade and basically sending it back to the states to make up their own decision. The reasoning for that under like federalism, as Alito explained, you have to teach why some people wanted it to be a universal decision for the whole country and why it was that way 50 years. You'd have to teach that point of view. And I do think the right has fetishized this issue a lot. So that's generally, you're going to have to teach the history of individual rights, even when some of them are taken away, and they could be under Project 2025, if in fact we had a Republican administration and a Republican Congress, and in fact if the so-called religious right were actually in charge. Now, Trump recently has been courting libertarians a little bit more, as you saw in the news. He was at the convention, he was on Tim Pool's show, and maybe this is a sign that things are changing a little bit. I think that's very interesting. But you do have to teach this material, at least to high school students. You have to teach biology, you have to teach social studies, and you have to teach the Constitution, you have to teach what federalism is all about, and what individual rights, how they come from the Bill of Rights, and how you interpret the Bill of Rights. You have to teach all of that. So it isn't going away. So that was just what I wanted to say today.